I woke up before her. The room was quiet in a way that pressed against my ears, the kind of quiet that makes you notice the sound of your own breathing. I watched her sleep, her chest rising and falling, small noises escaping her lips like she was still dreaming. I wanted to reach out, trace the curve of her shoulder, but I didn't. I never did, not that morning, not in a long time. The apartment smelled like coffee and something faintly metallic, the way it always does after the plumbing backs up. I got up, bare feet on the cold floor, and went to the kitchen. She was already there, standing at the counter, her hair pulled into a loose knot, humming a song I didn't know. I watched her slice bread with slow, careful movements, and I felt this sharp, hollow ache in my chest. I couldn't explain why. We had lived together for 6 years. 6 years of shared habits, inside jokes, arguments that ended in silence, laughter that ended in tears. I knew every crease on her face, every scar on her hands. And yet, even knowing all of that, I felt like I didn't really know her at all. Not completely. She glanced at me, caught my stare, and smiled. That small smile, the one that made me forget to breathe sometimes. But there was something in her eyes, a shadow I didn't name at first. I thought it was tiredness. Maybe it was worry. Or maybe it was the first sign of something I wouldn't understand until much later. I poured myself coffee, black, because I liked the bitterness. She didn't notice the hands shaking slightly, the way my fingers lingered on the mug longer than they should. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words got stuck in my throat. Silence had become easier between us than speech. That morning, we didn't talk about what was coming. There were bills to pay, a broken faucet to fix, a show to watch later. Ordinary things. And in that ordinariness, I felt a fragile kind of happiness, the kind that never lasts. I didn't know that this calm would be a prelude, that the next months would strip everything away, layer by layer. I remember laughing at a joke she made, something dumb about the coffee tasting like burnt tires. And feeling a surge of love, so intense it made my chest tight. I held it in, though, because I had learned to contain things like that. Love, fear, anger all bottled up, saved for moments I might never get to explain. And then, without knowing it, we began a countdown. A slow, silent erosion. It started slowly. At first, I didn't even notice. She complained about headaches she said were just stress, or days when she felt dizzy and laughed it off, telling me not to worry. I believed her. I wanted to. But then the symptoms got louder, harder to ignore. She started canceling plans, leaving work early, lying on the couch for hours. Her skin looked paler, her eyes dull in the mornings. I tried to brush it off, said things like, maybe you're just tired, or, it's nothing. But deep down, I felt my chest tighten every time she disappeared into the bathroom for the third time in an hour. The first hospital visit was the worst. The sterile smell, the smell of antiseptic and despair, clinging to everything. I held her hand as the nurse rattled off questions, and I tried to stay calm, tried to smile, tried to pretend I wasn't terrified. She squeezed my hand, her thumb rubbing the back of mine like she always did when she wanted to reassure me, but I could feel the tremor in her grip. They said it could be serious. Maybe chronic, maybe life-altering. Words like that echo in your skull, bouncing off walls you didn't know existed. I tried to stay logical, tried to tell myself it wasn't the end, but I could feel the fault lines opening in us. Our routines started to fracture. She slept more, and I tiptoed around the apartment, afraid to wake her. Meals became simple, quick, sometimes skipped. I cooked less, cleaned more, carried things she couldn't. I resented it, silently, shamefully, while feeling guilty for resenting it. Love had become heavy, almost physical, a constant weight pressing against my ribs. I remember sitting in the waiting room one afternoon, staring at the same faded magazine cover for what felt like hours. She was inside, getting tests done. I hated myself for how I stared at the clock, willing it to move faster, even though I wanted to be there with her. When she came out, her hair damp, skin clammy, she smiled at me. I wanted to collapse into her arms and never let go. Instead, I nodded, forced a joke, and we walked home in silence. I started noticing the little things that used to be invisible. How she avoided eye contact when I asked if she was in pain. How she laughed a little too hard at my jokes. How her phone stayed in her hand longer than it needed to. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself the stress, the illness, the fear, that's all it was. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe myself. But the truth is, the illness changed us. I felt it in my gut every night when I watched her struggle to get out of bed. I felt it in my chest when I reached for her hand and she flinched, too exhausted for the touch. I felt it in my own mind, questioning every moment, every memory. Was this love still? Or was it survival? The sickness was a silent thief. It stole our energy, our patience, our closeness. It forced us into hospital corridors and sterile rooms, into whispered fears and careful words. It made me notice how fragile she was, how fragile we were. And with that fragility came a pressure I couldn't name at first, a pressure that would soon crack everything I thought I knew about us. I started noticing how small gestures disappeared. She used to make me coffee exactly the way I liked it every morning. Now, sometimes it was cold, sometimes forgotten entirely. I told myself it was exhaustion, that her body was fighting something I couldn't see. But a part of me ached in a way that wasn't just sympathy. I missed the rituals we had built, the tiny proofs that we belonged to each other. We stopped talking the way we used to. Conversations became clipped, practical. Did you call the doctor? Did you eat? Did you take your pills? Nothing more. I caught myself staring at her across the kitchen table, waiting for a spark, any spark, of the woman I loved. Most days, it wasn't there. I started to feel like I was living with a shadow. A shadow that smelled like her, moved like her, but didn't laugh the same. I resented the illness in ways I didn't dare admit. I resented the quiet mornings I spent staring at her sleeping, wondering if she'd wake up. I resented the nights I spent pacing the apartment because her breathing had changed and I was terrified. I resented the way I felt my own body tightening with a dull, relentless anger that I couldn't place. I hated myself for it, hated myself for thinking any of this, but I couldn't stop. And then there were the nights she would stay up, scrolling on her phone, pretending to be asleep when I came into the room. I caught glimpses of messages, fleeting words on a screen before she hit it too fast. I told myself I was imagining it. She was tired. She was sick. My mind was paranoid, twisted by worry. But still, the thought lodged itself in my chest, a tiny stone of suspicion I tried to swallow down. I started watching her differently. I noticed how she flinched when I touched her in ways that used to feel natural. I noticed how she avoided certain topics, certain rooms, certain questions. I noticed how her laugh sometimes came a beat too late, how her eyes flickered somewhere else when she should have been looking at me. And still, I told myself it was all the illness. That's what I clung to, the only explanation I allowed myself. Our apartment felt smaller. The walls seemed to shrink, closing in with the weight of things unsaid. I would sit on the couch, waiting for her to come home from appointments, from errands, from work, and when she arrived, the silence between us stretched longer and longer. I tried to fill it with jokes, with gentle touches, but even she recoiled sometimes, too exhausted, too fragile, too distant. I realized, in quiet, terrifying moments, that I didn't know her anymore. Or maybe I never had. Maybe the version of her I loved was a memory I carried around like a photograph in my wallet, pretending it was still there. I didn't know where she ended and where the illness began, and the line blurred in ways that made me ache with confusion and helplessness. And that's when the first real fissures appeared. Small lies, tiny omissions, behavior that made no sense. She would tell me she was at a doctor's appointment when she wasn't. She would laugh off questions I knew she was dodging. I wanted to confront her, to ask the truth, but every time I tried, I froze. I was terrified of breaking her, terrified of shattering us. So I let it slide, convincing myself it was stress, it was the illness, it was me imagining things. I hated myself for it. Hated myself for rationalizing it. Hated myself for the quiet, gnawing fear that maybe this wasn't just illness anymore. That maybe something else was happening, something I wouldn't be able to undo. And yet, even in the quiet dread, even in the gnawing suspicion, I still loved her. I still wanted to believe in us. That's the cruelest part. I could see the cracks forming, smell the smoke before the fire, and still, I clung to the illusion that everything would be okay if I just tried hard enough. It started with small things I couldn't explain. A text that flashed too briefly for me to read. A laugh from the other room that didn't belong to me. A pause when I asked a question, as if she was trying to remember what to say. I saw the hesitation, the tiny hesitation that made my chest tighten. And every time it happened, I wanted to ask, to confront her, but I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself the illness made her forgetful, distracted. But then the phone started disappearing from view. She would leave it face down on the counter, slip it into her bag when I walked into the room. And I noticed the way she straightened when I looked up from my laptop, a subtle shift in posture, a defensive edge I had never seen before. I told myself it was nothing. I lied to myself every day. I started replaying moments in my head, trying to catch the first signs. The extra time she spent at the pharmacy picking up prescriptions. The night she came home late, insisting she had been working. The way she avoided my eyes when I asked about her day. Every detail I had ignored, every rationalization I had made, felt heavier now, like stones in my chest. I began to notice the changes in our intimacy. Small touches she once welcomed now felt tense, measured, distant. Even a hug carried a hesitation I couldn't ignore. And still, when I reached for her hand, she let me hold it, smiled at me, whispered my name. She still loved me. I still loved her. That's what made it worse. That's what made the slow erosion unbearable. There were nights I stayed awake, listening to her breathing, pretending I was asleep, watching her fumble with her phone. I knew I shouldn't have been looking. I knew it was a violation, a betrayal of trust in itself. But I couldn't stop. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what I couldn't. And every time I saw her tense, every time her fingers lingered on the screen longer than necessary, my stomach twisted with dread. And yet, I found ways to rationalize it. She was sick. She was exhausted. Maybe she was just looking up something work-related, nothing more. Maybe it was my own insecurities, my paranoia, my inability to control what was happening to us. I clung to those explanations like a life raft, even though I felt the raft slowly fraying beneath me. One night, she came to bed late. I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks. She slipped under the covers, smelled faintly of perfume I didn't recognize. She pressed close, whispered my name, and I almost believed it was fine. Almost. But the scent stayed with me, clinging to my skin long after she fell asleep. I lay there, frozen, feeling the slow, creeping realization that something had shifted, something I might never be able to put back together. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, to rip it all open. But I was scared. Scared of what I would hear, scared of what I might do, scared of losing the last fragments of her love I still had. So I stayed silent. I watched, I worried, I counted the cracks. And all the while, I still loved her. I still believed in her. I still wanted her to be the woman I remembered, the one who hummed in the kitchen, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes, the one who held my hand without hesitation. That love, that desperate, stubborn love, became both my comfort and my prison. I caught it finally. There was no room left for excuses, no way to rationalize it, no illness that could explain it away. I saw her, or maybe I just knew. One look, one moment, and all the tiny doubts I had been burying exploded into a single, crushing clarity. It wasn't just the phone anymore. It wasn't the late nights or the small lies. It was everything. The way she flinched at my touch, the way she smiled a little too brightly at a message, the way she avoided me in ways that felt deliberate, cold. I watched her, and the life we had built, all the laughter, all the quiet mornings, all the habits that made us, suddenly felt like a lie I had been telling myself to survive. I remember standing in the kitchen, coffee in hand, feeling my chest tighten so badly I thought I might collapse. She was laughing at something on her phone, the sound piercing, beautiful, ordinary, and my stomach turned. That laughter didn't belong to me anymore. Not really. I wanted to step forward, to scream, to demand the truth, but my body froze. My mind raced, searching for a way to deny it, to twist it, to make it not real. But there was no escape. And then I remembered the little moments, the ones I had brushed aside. How her eyes darted away when I asked a simple question. How she seemed distracted when I touched her. How the smell of that perfume lingered on her skin that night. Every single thing I had noticed, every instinct I had tried to silence, now screamed at me. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It had been there all along, hiding in plain sight, and I had failed to see it. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to shake her, to tell her she ruined everything, to make her feel the raw ache I felt in my chest. But I couldn't. Because even in that moment, I loved her. I loved her so much that the betrayal cut deeper than anything else, deeper than the illness, deeper than the silence, deeper than any fear I had ever carried. I felt dizzy, like the floor had shifted under me. I wanted to vomit, to scream, to disappear. But all I could do was stand there, holding the mug I had been gripping too tightly, watching her laugh at something that had nothing to do with me, and feel my world collapse quietly around me. I thought about the life we had. 6 years. Countless mornings like the one I had cherished, countless nights lying in bed, tangled in each other's arms, countless moments where I thought I knew her completely. And now, all of it felt like a cruel illusion. I questioned every memory. Every laugh. Every touch. Did she ever really feel the way I thought she did? Or had I been living in a fantasy I had built for my own survival? I didn't confront her that night. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I couldn't. I didn't have the strength. Instead, I went to the bedroom, closed the door behind me, and let myself curl into the tightest ball I could manage. I let the silence swallow me. I let the grief seep into my bones. I realized something else, too. This wasn't just about her. It was about me. I had known, in some corner of my mind, that things weren't right. And I had lied to myself. I had ignored the signs because I was afraid of what the truth would do. And now that it had arrived anyway, it was worse than I could have imagined. I cried that night, silently, because even tears felt too loud in a world that had gone numb. I hated myself for loving her. I hated myself for being blind. I hated myself for the sickness in my chest that wouldn't leave. And worse than the betrayal, worse than the grief, was the quiet, unbearable fact that some part of me still wanted her. Still needed her. Still hoped, in a foolish, impossible way, that the woman I loved could somehow come back. She didn't. I finally spoke. Not the accusations I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. Not the screaming, the pleading, the yelling. No. I spoke with the calmest voice I could manage, and that made it worse. Because calm doesn't hide pain, it amplifies it. I know, I said. She froze. I watched her face, searching for any sign that I was wrong, that I had misunderstood everything. But her eyes flickered away, too late. And in that flicker, I saw everything. I know, I repeated. Louder this time. My voice cracked, and it felt like a rope snapping inside me. I've known for a long time. She looked down, shame written across her face. I wanted to hate her, to grab her, to shake her until she explained herself. But I couldn't. Because I still loved her. That was the cruelest part. My love had become a weapon against me. The silence stretched between us, thicker than any words we could have said. I could hear her breathing, shallow, careful, like she was trying not to make a sound that would break me further. I wanted to break her, to scream, to punish her for the betrayal, for the lies, for everything. But all I could do was collapse into myself, the grief and rage coiling like a snake in my chest. I don't understand, she whispered. And I didn't blame her. How could she understand what she had done to me? How could anyone? I don't understand either, I admitted. The words tasted like ash. I thought I knew you. I thought we were. I don't know. I thought we were something real. And that's when it hit me fully. All the memories I had clung to, the mornings, the late nights, the laughter, the whispered secrets, they weren't gone. They were still there. But they were poison now. Every touch, every look, every laugh carried the weight of the betrayal. It was no longer innocent. Nothing was. She reached for me, slow, careful. I flinched. The gesture was small, but it might as well have been violent. I couldn't let her touch me. I couldn't let her near me. I wanted her, but I hated her. I loved her, but I despised her. I needed her, but I wanted her gone. We stayed like that for hours. Not speaking. Not touching. Just two bodies in a room full of quiet, each of us breaking in our own way. I hated that I still wanted to hold her, that I still wanted to hear her laugh, that I still wanted the life we had. And I hated myself for hating myself for it. Eventually, I left the room. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't wait for her. I walked through the apartment, through the empty spaces that used to feel like home, and I realized it wasn't home anymore. Nothing we had built could survive this. Not the love, not the routines, not the years. And yet, I carried her with me. Every step I took, every breath, every beat of my heart reminded me of what I had lost. Not just her, but the version of myself that had trusted, that had loved without suspicion, that had believed in us. That version was gone. Replaced by someone who knew betrayal so intimately that it would haunt him forever. By the time I returned to the bedroom, she was asleep. Or pretending to be. I didn't touch her. I didn't speak. I lay in the other half of the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, counting each one, knowing that every breath she took was a reminder of what I had lost, what I would never get back. I wanted to hate her so badly. But I couldn't. And that's when I realized. Love and betrayal aren't opposites. They exist together. They coexist. They twist and fracture you in ways that leave permanent scars. I stayed awake all night, staring at the dark, feeling every heartbeat echo the collapse of something I could never repair. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this would follow me forever. The love, the betrayal, the guilt, the emptiness, it was mine now, and there was no escape. I don't know when I stopped waiting for her. Maybe it was the first morning she didn't make coffee. Maybe it was the first time I walked past the pharmacy and didn't think about her. Maybe it was the night I realized that even if she came back to me, we wouldn't be the same. The apartment is quiet now in a way that feels permanent. I wake up alone, coffee cold in a chipped mug, and I can still imagine her in the kitchen, humming that stupid, beautiful song, moving like she belongs to me. I reach out instinctively, and my hand meets nothing. The memory hits like a punch to the ribs. I remember her laughter, her touch, the way she smelled after a shower, and I wonder if I ever really had her at all. I go to the places we used to go. The grocery store, the hospital corridors, the small park bench where we sat in silence on Sunday mornings. Everything is the same, yet different. It's like the world has rewritten itself around the absence of her, and I'm stuck in the wrong story. I replay our last months over and over, trying to pinpoint the exact moment it broke. Was it when the illness took her strength? Or when the betrayal became undeniable? Or was it always there, beneath the surface, waiting for a quiet day, a tired morning, a small oversight to bloom into something unfixable? I hate myself for the things I thought, for the anger I felt, for the love I couldn't fully let go of. I hate myself for still missing her. I hate myself for imagining her with someone else and feeling a pain sharper than anything I ever felt from her absence. And yet, I cannot stop. I lie awake at night and I hear her laugh in my head. I see her smile in my dreams. I touch nothing, because even that would be a betrayal to the silence that remains. She's gone in the physical sense, but she lives in every memory, every ache, every quiet corner of my chest. The guilt is a constant companion. I think about the words I never said, the moments I ignored, the suspicions I buried. I think about the illness and how I failed to protect her, how I failed to understand her, how I failed to recognize the love that was shifting beneath my own. And I know I can never forgive myself. Sometimes, I think about calling her. Sometimes, I imagine what it would feel like to hear her voice, to ask why, to beg for an answer. But I don't. Because the answer wouldn't fix anything. The truth wouldn't repair the fractures. And so, I sit here, surrounded by silence, carrying all of it, love, betrayal, guilt, loss, and pretending that the world is still intact. I've learned something cruel about love: it doesn't end neatly. It doesn't offer closure. It leaves you with fragments, pieces of memory that you pick up like broken glass, cutting your hands each time you try to hold them together. And the fragments don't make a whole again. They never do. The apartment is empty. The coffee is cold. The sun rises and falls and doesn't care. And I exist somewhere between remembering and forgetting, between love and hate, between grief and numbness, carrying the weight of a life that will never be the same. And maybe that's the only truth I can live with. That some losses are permanent, some betrayals unhealable, and some loves, no matter how real, leave nothing behind but the echo of what could have been.